Hello viewers, welcome to UVOL, the channel for database and data professionals. This is the third part of the series on integrating an Oracle database with Microsoft Active Directory, and in this part we are going to learn how to use Kerberos authentication for database users to implement CMU or centrally managed users feature. So in the first part in this series, we created our free Microsoft Active Directory controller on an Windows Server 2019. Then in part 2, we configured our Oracle database for authenticating database users using the Microsoft Active Directory. And this third part is going to be really interesting, where we will implement the Kerberos authentication for full centrally managed users or CMU in an Oracle database. If you have not watched the previous two parts in this series, I suggest you watch them first to get a better understanding on what we are going to do in this part. Because a few steps like creating the Active Directory service account for Oracle database and Active Directory communication, creating the database wallet, the settings of database initialization parameters, etc. that we did in the last part are not going to be duplicated in this part. I am using virtual machines created using Oracle VirtualBox for this demo. And I also have a full series of tutorials on Oracle VirtualBox virtual machines, starting from how to install it, create and manage virtual machines, etc. Watch the full series and create your own virtual IT lab to learn database, Unix, Linux, networking, or any other area in the IT world where you want to be an expert. Now, let's first get familiar with the virtual environment that we are going to use for this demo. This is my 64-bit Windows Server 2019 installed on a virtual machine named WinSVR1, where we configured our AD controller in the last part. Then this is our database server on a Linux virtual machine named VM Linux 1 with 64-bit Oracle Linux 7.9 and with Oracle RDBMS version 19.3 installed. We have a database named ORCL1 in this server. I just logged in as Oracle user to the server, who is the owner of all Oracle installations in this server. Now let's go back to our Windows Server 2019 or the AD controller. If you remember, in the previous part, we created a service account named Aura user in the Active Directory for the communication between Oracle database and the Active Directory controller. Let's take a look into the account. First, let's bring up a PowerShell, and I'm mostly copying and pasting the command to avoid any typing mistakes and wasting time. All these commands that I'm going to use throughout this tutorial are long and complex in nature. Unless you are a regular Windows Server administrator, you don't have to remember them. I'm giving all the steps and the commands in the description of this video or in a linked shared document in my Google Drive. You can copy them or just keep them handy. So the command I'm using is get AD user identity Aura user, and that gives us all the details about the service account that we created earlier with the common name as Aura user and the second component of the common name users. Then first part of the domain controller or domain component Manush, and the second component as home. And there is no given name, and the name again Aura user, and it belongs to the object class users. The users in Active Directory terminology are known as principals. Now we have to create a service principal name or SPN in the Active Directory to be used in Kerberos. The SPN is created with the fully qualified DNS name or the FQDN of the database server. You have to create one SPN for each of the database servers. First, we will create an AD user with the name of the server, which can be called as an UPN or user principal name. Then we will create a service principal name or SPN, which will be mapped to the UPN. Again, I'm pasting the command here, and then I will explain. And in this command, we can see that we are creating a new AD user with the name VM Linux 1. That is the name of the server or the database server. And the user principal name is the fully qualified name of our database server. That is vmlinux1.auraexpert.org @ the domain name of our AD controller. And again, the display name is the fully qualified name of the database server. Description, I'm putting service account for Oracle database Kerberos authentication. You can put whatever you want here to describe the user. And the path is where common name users, domain component first, Manas, domain component second, home. And you see the change password at logon, I'm putting as false because we don't want to change the password. And the password never expires, true. Cannot change password, true. Then enable, true. And now once we press enter, it will ask for the password. And the password here I'm going to use as user aura 54321 with the U in caps, and the first E is replaced with the number 3, and press enter, and the user has been created. And then we will get some details about this user using the get aduser command, that is get aduser minus identity VM Linux 1, and we get the details of the user that we created. And we can also use the dsquery command to get the distinguished name of the user, that is dsquery user minus name VM Linux 1, and we get the distinguished name of the user which we are going to use later on. Now we will create a service principal name or SPN, which will be mapped to the AD account or the UPN to extract a service key table from Kerberos. Again, I am pasting the command here, then I will explain. First, let's clear the screen. And this is the command that I'm going to use using the ktpass utility, that is ktpass minus princi, that is the name of the principal. And this is the syntax that we have to follow, which starts with oracle slash vmlinux1.oraexpert.org, that is the name of the database server, @ manash.home, that is the name of the domain where our domain controller exists. So this oracle slash part is pretty much fixed. And when we create a key tab for an Oracle database server, we have to use this oracle slash in the beginning. Then minus map user, for this particular parameter, we are passing the name of the server or the FQDN of the server, which is vmlinux1.oraexpert.org. Minus crypto all, it means it is going to generate all the possible keys. Minus pass star, that means it is going to ask for the password. And minus out, where we are specifying the name of the output file or the key tab file. So if you see, the name of the output file is given as the name of the server itself. So you have to create one key tab file for each of the database servers which you want to configure with the Active Directory using Kerberos. So once we press enter, it will ask for the password. And I'm using a password here, user aura 12345 again with the U in caps and the first E replaced with the number 3. If you want, you can maintain a different password. I'm just pasting the password here and pasting again. And the command successfully completed. It's important to see the output. There should not be any errors. This particular warning is fine, that is fee type and account type do not match. This might cause problem. Actually, it is not going to create any problem for us. But most importantly, this successfully mapped oracle slash vmlinux1.oraexpert.org to vmlinux1. This is important. So our mapping has been successfully completed, and also we see all the keys that it has created. Now we have to transfer this particular key tab file to the database server. You can use any method. You can download using FileZilla, then transfer it. I am using scp command to transfer the file to the database server. Make sure that the AD server can reach out to the database server using a ping command. So if I use the name of the database server or the IP of the database server, I am able to ping. So this is okay. And let's take a look at the file that was created here. And this is the file, that is the key tab file created in the current directory. And I am going to use the scp command to send this file to the database server using Oracle user and to the temp directory or the file system in the database server. Press enter, it will ask for the Oracle user password and the file has been transferred. So next couple of steps we are going to do in the database server. So let's go back to the database server now. First, we are going to create a directory named keytab, and this is the path that I'm using under U001 CMU Kerberos keytab. You can specify the location as per your convenience or availability. So this keytab directory will actually hold the keytab file that we transferred from our AD controller. So I will simply copy the file that is available in our temp directory to the keytab directory. Let's take a look. And this is the keytab file that we just transferred to this keytab location. Then let's go to the Oracle Home Network admin directory to make some changes in the sqlnet.ora file. So change directory to that location, and we have this sqlnet.ora file. So we'll make a copy of this, and then we'll make the changes. We will put some lines here, and I will replace this first line with a more updated one where I'm using names.directory path, TNS names, easy connect, O names, that is for Oracle names, and host name. And these are the additional parameters that I'm putting here to be used in our Kerberos authentication. That is sqlnet.kerberos5 keytab, that is the location of the keytab file. Then authentication services, Bquet, Kerberos 5 free, and Kerberos 5. Then Kerberos clock skew, this stands for the amount of time after which the Kerberos ticket will be expired. And the Kerberos configuration file is in this location, which we are going to create shortly. And the Kerberos confirmation MIT equals true, authentication Kerberos service Oracle, fallback authentication true, and the wallet location. This is very important. This wallet we have created in this location in the part 2 of this series. Again, if you have not watched that step to create the wallet, you have to follow the steps for creating the wallet and place the generated key files in this particular location. So this sqlnet.ora file parameters basically specifies the naming methods, their order, keytab location, Kerberos configuration file location, which we are going to create shortly, and the timeout limit, wallet location, etc. Please note that the wallet location is the one we created in the previous part in this series. You can get the details about each of the SQLnet parameter in Oracle documentation. You can get the details about each of the SQLnet parameters in Oracle documentation. If you see, we have specified the Kerberos configuration file as a parameter in the sqlnet.ora, but actually we have not created this file yet. So now we have to create it. So let's save this file, and then I will create the configuration file for Kerberos using the same path that I specified in the sqlnet.ora, that is U001 CMU Kerberos krb5.conf. And I am going to paste these lines, and then I'm going to explain. That is leave defaults, under which I'm putting the default realm, that is the manoj.home, or the domain where our domain controller exists. And the realms are where I'm specifying the domain name and the KDC, that is our key distribution center, or the AD controller server, that is winserver.manoj.home, and the port is 88, which is the default. We are not changing it. Then domain realm, where we are mapping our domains, because our database server has this particular domain, oraexpert.org, and which will be mapped to manoj.home. Please see that there's a dot in front of this, and in the second line it's the same but without the dot. So you have to maintain this particular syntax here. If you have a different domain name in your database server, then the name of the domain where your Active Directory server exists. Now we will save this. Next, we have to create the actual database user in the Active Directory, which will use the Kerberos authentication to log into the database. Let's go back to the AD controller again. And in the PowerShell, I will paste the command to create the user named orakrb. I'm pasting the command here, and then I will explain. First, let's clear the screen here, and then this is the command that I'm using, that is new AD user name of the user, Aura KRB. You can select a name as per your choice, and usually it is the Active Directory user which is going to actually use the database. Now the user principal name I am putting as Aura KRB at manoj.home. This is important to put the domain part here, then the display name Aura KRB, then the description, database user account for KRB or the Kerberos authentication, then the path, and again change password at login false, password never expires true, and cannot change password true, enable true, and once we press enter, it is going to ask for the password. I am putting a password which is a little complicated and which is acceptable for the Active Directory users. As you can see in the screen, this is the complex password that I'm using. Press enter and the user has been created. Let's display the details about this user using the getAdUser, and here are the details about the user. Now let's check the membership of this particular user. If you remember, to be able to log in to the database, the AD user must be members of at least two particular groups that we created in the last part, that is Aura VFR 12C and Aura VFR 11Z. Now we will use the command to verify its membership. First, let's clear the screen, and we are using the command get AD principal group membership of Aura KRB and pipe select name. And we see currently it belongs to only one group called domain users. So we have to make it member of the two groups that I mentioned. So I am going to paste the commands here. The first one, add AD principal group membership identity Aura KRB. First I will make a member of Aura VFR 11Z. And similarly, I will also use the other command to make it a member of the group Aura VFR 12C. So both the commands completed successfully. Let's execute the membership verification command again. And the user now belongs to these three groups: domain user, Aura VFR 12C, Aura VFR 11Z. And then another property we need to verify is the ORCL common attribute. This is very important. If the ORCL common attribute property is blank, then the user will not be able to log into the Oracle database. So we will use the command get aduser identity Aura KRB minus properties ORCL common attribute. Press enter, and in the output we see that the ORCL common attribute property is currently blank, so we have to set it accordingly. The reason for this property being blank is because we added the user to the Oracle filters or groups after its password was set or created initially. So we will reset the password with the same password that we created the user with using the command set AD account password. I'm pasting it here. Set AD account password identity Aura KRB reset new password, and then I am putting the same password that I created the user with. So now the password has been set, and now let's execute the previous command again to see the ORCL common attribute, and now we see that it is now populated with some encrypted keys. So we are good. Now almost all the prerequisite things are done. Now we are going to see the authentication process for a database user. So we have actually two options for our Kerberos authentication to work for the database user. First, let's go back to our database server. Let's clear the screen, and then we will log into our database. I log in as sysdba. You can use any DBA account, and then we will create a user which will be identified externally. I'm just pasting the command here, create user Aura KRB, that is the user that we created in our domain, along with the domain part. And this particular part you can copy from the PowerShell output. Let's go back and show you again the PowerShell. So this is the principal name or the username of the AD user, Aura KRB at manoj.home. So I'm creating the user which is externally identified using the same name. So press enter, and the user created. Please note that it is important to keep the username in uppercase. Then I will grant some basic privileges so that the user can at least log in with the create session privilege, and also it will have select access on the $$ database performance view so that it can query it. Now let's log out of the database from our sys session, clear the screen, and the next step is to create a Kerberos ticket using the OK init utility. A Kerberos ticket is a digital certificate that enables a host to prove its identity to another host in a secure way. This utility comes with Oracle RDBMS software and available in bin directory under the Oracle Home. If the path environment variable is properly set with Oracle Home bin directory, you don't have to specify the full path of this utility. Just to make sure it is in the path, I will put the command which OK init, and it gives us the full path that is under the bin directory which belongs to the database home. So first of all, I will clear the ticket cache so that no existing ticket will interfere. So OK dstry, that is OK destroy, which will destroy any tickets. If there is nothing, it will just say that no credential cache found. It means currently there is nothing to destroy. And then we are going to use the command OK init and the name of the user, that is Aura KRB. So it will ask for the password that we set for the Aura KRB user, and I will specify the password, which is as we said before, and press enter. It takes a couple of seconds because it needs to communicate with the Active Directory controller using the service account or the service principal, and the ticket has been created. To validate if a ticket has been created, we can use the command OK list. And as we can see in the output, that for the user Aura KRB that belongs to the manoj.home domain, one ticket is created with the validity period and expiry time also given based on the timeout setting we put in our sqlnet.aura. Now all we need to do is to log into the database, and there's a specific format that needs to be used when we are using Kerberos authentication, for which your TNS entry for the database must be working. As our TNS entry for the database ORCL1 is also ORCL1, so I'll just validate TNS ping ORCL1, and this should be successful. Yes, it took 0 milliseconds. Now you can connect to the database using SQL plus space /@ORCL1. So this will automatically take the current user for which the ticket was created to log into the database. And you can see that we have not specified any username and password here, and the user is actually able to connect to the database. And we will use the same query that we used before to find out a few details about the connected user, the session, and the method used, etc. And this query you don't have to remember again. It is there in the description or the shared Google document that is linked to this video. So I am just pasting the command which will give us the database name, the session user, that is Aura KRB at manoj.home, the authenticated identity, authentication method, Kerberos, identification type, external, enterprise identity, which is the same as the authenticated identity above, that is nothing but the Active Directory user named Aura KRB at manoj.home. So now we can say that we were able to log in to the database using Kerberos authentication. But this user Aura KRB is not fully centrally managed because we had to create the user in the database side also. Although the authentication is done at the Active Directory level using the AD password, this user is present in both the Active Directory and in the database also as an external user. So to get the full benefit of Kerberos, where we don't even have to create a database user, for each corresponding Active Directory user, we will create a group in the Active Directory and a shared user or a schema in the database. And to do that, let's go back to our AD controller. So first let's clear the screen, and then we are going to create a group. I'm simply copying and pasting the command. that is new AD group minus server win server 1 dot manage dot home, that is the fully qualified name of our AD controller server, minus name, that is the name of the group. I'm putting a CMU underscore group. You can put any name of your choice. Then group scope global path, which is the location where this particular group will be created, that is CN users DC manage DC home, and group category security, and press enter. The group is created, and again we will display a few information about this group using the get AD group identity CMU group properties distinguish name. This is the most important part that we have to keep in mind for the next couple of steps, that is the distinguished name. Now let's add our AD user named aura_krb to this particular group. First, let's validate which groups this particular user called aura_krb belongs to. It should belong to only 3 groups currently. So I am simply pasting the command, that is get AD principal group membership for aura_krb user pipe select name. So currently it belongs to domain users aura VFR 12c and aura VFR 11g. So we have to make this particular user a member of this CMU group also. So to do that, we will simply use the command add AD principal group membership minus identity aura_krb minus member of CMU group. The same command you used before also while adding this user to this particular 2 groups, that is aura VFR 12c, aura VFR 11g. Now let's execute the command again to validate its group membership, and we see that now it belongs to the CMU group. Now we have to create a common or shared user in the database which is going to be globally identified and also belongs to this particular AD group, that is CMU group, and we will do that using this distinguished name. So let's go back to our database server again. First, let's exit the existing session, and then we have to log in as sysuser to create the shared user first. First, let's clear the screen, and I am pasting the command here, that is create user CMU common user identified globally as CN CMU group CN users DC manage DC home. So this is the part that we copied from our distinguished name part of the group that we created with the name CMU group. Let me show you one more time. This is the distinguished name part that we are using to create the shared database user. Press enter, and that will create the user, and we will grant some minimum privileges to this user so that it can at least connect to the database with grant create session to CMU common user. Then we will also grant select privilege on the VDollar database to this particular shared user, and then we will drop the user that we created as externally authenticated user named aura_krb. So let's scroll up to find out the user that we created with the name aura_krb, because we don't need this user anymore. So drop user aura_krb at manage.home. I have to specify double quotes around the username because it is case sensitive, and the user is dropped. Now let's exit from the database prompt with our sys login. Let's clear the screen, and we will destroy any previous tickets created using OK_dstry, that is to destroy the Kerberos ticket, and the ticket has been destroyed because this time it did not show the error message like it did before. Now we will again do the OK_init command to create a new ticket for the aura_krb user. So OK_init aura_krb, and it will ask for the aura_krb user's AD password, and I will supply the password which I am using, and you can see in the screen. It will take a couple of seconds because it needs to communicate to the Active Directory controller to validate and the ticket has been created. So using the OK list command, we can see this is the ticket just now created with the expiry time. And let's clear the screen, and then we'll again use SQL plus /@orcl1, and the session has been established. Now let's execute our query to find out a few information about the user and the session, where we see that the database name is ORCL1, session user is CMU common user. If you see the difference, earlier it was Aura KRB user, now it is the name of the common user that we created. But the authenticated identity is the one that is coming from our AD, that is Aura KRB @manas.home, authentication method, Kerberos global, identification type, global shared, and the enterprise identity, that is the distinguished name of the user. So you see that this particular user, Aura KRB, does not even exist in the database. It exists only in the Active Directory, but through this common user that we created in the database, it was able to log in. You can create n number of users in Active Directory, and if they are mapped to the group to which this particular CMU common user is also mapped, they will be able to log into the database without a password, but using the Kerberos ticket. So this is a very secure and convenient way to maintain database users centrally. You can log out and log in back as many times you want without a password, but as long as your Kerberos ticket is valid. The validity of the ticket will expire based on the timeout limit you specified using the sqlnet.aura file against the parameter named sqlnet.kerberos5_clockskew. With CMU, user administration becomes very easy for the DBAs, as for the new users joining the organization who need database access or existing database users leaving the organization, the DBA does not have to create or drop the user in the database level. All that needs to be done is at the Active Directory level, where the Windows administrator will create the AD account for the new user or drop the user account from the Active Directory, and the user will automatically get access or lose access on the database as long as the Kerberos authentication is configured the way I demonstrated. And this is the beauty of the CMU. And with this, I am concluding this third part in the series. So viewers, please provide your feedback in the comment section of the video and hit the like button if you found it useful. That will mean a lot to me and help grow this channel.